I still remember the weight of the moment, as if it were pressed against my chest yesterday. The office was too quiet, the kind of silence that vibrates in your bones. The sun had begun to dip behind the towering skyline, casting a molten glow across the glass walls of my corner office. Everything, the leather chair beneath me, the polished surface of my mahogany desk, the faint hum of the city outside, felt exaggerated, as if the world had paused, holding its breath in anticipation. I sipped my espresso, the bitterness a small anchor against the storm I could already feel coming. My reflection in the window caught my eyes, sharp and unyielding, yet I could see the tension crawling through my jaw, the minute tremor in my fingers. I had trained myself to mask stress, to appear unflappable, but tonight there were no shields strong enough. They arrived punctually, as billionaires do. The Carrington family, the kind of power that commands rooms before they enter, a shadow over every deal in the city. Charles Carrington, patriarch and embodiment of old money arrogance, stepped in first. He was impossibly tall, his tailored suit sculpting a frame that seemed almost predatory. His hair was silver but impeccably styled, and his eyes, blue, icy, calculating, swept over the room with ownership. Following him, his daughter Elise moved with deliberate grace, heels clicking a rhythm I recognized as authority. Elise carried an elegance that masked ruthlessness. Her smile was a blade with velvet edges. Behind them, their advisor, a man named Harding, trailed, his face sharp, glasses reflecting the setting sun, an observer to every subtle inflection of my expression. I rose to greet them, hard hammering with a blend of anticipation and defiance. "Mr. Carrington, Elise, welcome," I said, my voice steady professional, yet beneath the surface, a coil of nerves twined itself tighter around my chest. I watched them settle into the chairs opposite me, the fabric of Elise's cream suit whispering as she crossed her legs. Every detail was deliberate, the silver bracelet resting on her wrist, the faint scent of expensive perfume mingling with the warmth of the room, the way her hand lingered near her neck as though testing the air. My instincts whispered danger, but I masked the warning with a professional smile. Charles began, his voice smooth, dripping with the ease of power. "I've been following your company's growth. Impressive, truly. But ambition, as you know, can be flexible. And flexibility, I'm afraid, sometimes requires certain concessions." His gaze locked onto mine, cold, unyielding, as though weighing my very soul against some invisible scale. I felt the first prickle of discomfort, a subtle shift in the room's air, like static before a storm. I nodded, masking the discomfort. "I'm open to negotiations, as always. Let's discuss terms." Elise leaned forward, her eyes glinting. "It's not just about the numbers, is it?" she said softly, almost intimate, but the undercurrent was undeniable. "We're interested in character, integrity, the kind of loyalty that isn't swayed by a spreadsheet." Her words were slow, deliberate. Loyalty, in their context, meant subjugation. My stomach tightened. I felt Harding's eyes on me, analytical, calculating, a mirror to their intentions. "Of course," I said carefully, my inner monologue spinning. "I know this game. I've danced it before. But this time it feels different. This isn't just leverage. This is humiliation disguised as negotiation." And then the terms emerged. Not numbers, not contracts, but subtler, more invasive demands. Tests of obedience, questions about personal boundaries, insinuations about actions I would have to perform to prove worthiness. My throat went dry, the espresso I had sipped now tasting bitter and metallic. I felt the room shrink around me, the walls pressing close, the leather chair suddenly too soft, as though it were swallowing me whole. This is absurd, degrading. And yet, here they sit, smiling, expecting compliance. My thoughts raced. I could see the headlines already. CEO of rising tech firm bends to billionaire pressure. But my body, my very spine refused. My hands tightened into fists, the leather of the armrests biting into my skin as if reminding me of my limits. I need a moment," I said, my voice controlled, though my heart thundered like war drums. I stood, walking toward the window, letting my fingers brush the cold glass. The city stretched beneath me, indifferent, eternal. I pressed my forehead against it, inhaling, letting the chill seep into my bones. "You cannot sell your dignity. Not for money. Not for power. Not for anything. When I turned back, their smiles had not faltered. Elisa's eyes glittered with amusement, Charles's with expectation. "Decisions, Ms. Wright," Charles said, voice smooth, almost casual. "Can you see your way to compliance?" I met his gaze directly, feeling the full weight of their scrutiny, the oppressive tension, the invisible chains of wealth and influence. And yet, in that instant, a quiet, insistent voice within me rose above the noise. "No, I cannot," I said firmly, each word measured, deliberate. Silence fell like a curtain, heavy and suffocating. I watched as shock flickered across their faces, quickly replaced by practiced composure. Elisa's smile did not waver, but it sharpened, a blade of ice. Charles leaned back, exhaling slowly, his gaze appraising, weighing, calculating the damage. "You understand the consequences, I assume?" Elisa's voice was silk-laced with steel. "Refusing a deal of this magnitude, careers have ended over less." I nodded, deliberately slow, letting the weight of my resolve echo in the silence. "I understand perfectly. And yet, my career is not worth my dignity." The words hung in the air, a fragile defiance against the tidal force of their power. My pulse pounded in my ears, every nerve alive, every breath deliberate. I could feel the tension as a physical thing, coiling in my stomach, stretching along my spine, tingling through my fingertips. It was fear, yes, but also exhilaration. This is the moment that defines me. They left the office shortly after, their departure as poised and deliberate as their arrival. I watched the door close, the click echoing in the empty room. Silence returned, heavier now, weighted with the magnitude of what had just transpired. I sank into my chair, letting my hands trail across the desk, grounding myself in the tactile reality of polished wood and smooth leather. I did it. I stood my ground. And in that quiet aftermath, I realized something profound. The world had not ended. My career was not destroyed, though the path ahead was uncertain. For the first time, I understood that strength was not measured by compliance or wealth, but by integrity, by the courage to face immense pressure without bending. I closed my eyes, letting the tactile sensation of a chair, the desk beneath my hands, the cool glass against my fingertips anchor me. This is not the end. This is the beginning. The morning after the meeting, the office felt unusually still, as though it, too, had been holding its breath in the wake of the previous evening's confrontation. Sunlight filtered weakly through the blinds, casting thin stripes of gold across my desk, illuminating the untouched contract proposals and the half-drunk cup of espresso. I could still feel the residual tension in my chest, a lingering pulse that had not yet subsided. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and my lingering perfume, mingling into an almost intimate familiarity that grounded me even as uncertainty clawed at the edges of my mind. I walked the length of the office, fingers brushing along the edge of the desk, noting every imperfection, the tiny scratch near the corner, the slight warp in the veneer. It was a tactile ritual, a means of anchoring myself in the reality of my surroundings, reminding myself that I had made a choice, and that the physical world did not care for the judgment of billionaires. You chose integrity over wealth. That matters more than their approval. The thought reverberated with an almost sacred weight. By mid-morning, the effects of my decision began to ripple outward. My assistant, Clara, a petite woman with a precise efficiency that made her indispensable, arrived with the latest memos and urgent emails. Her eyes, large and perceptive, were filled with unasked questions, a delicate curiosity I had come to know well. "You look different today," she said, placing a cup of tea beside my laptop. The steam curled upward, warm and comforting against the chill that had settled into the office. Her observation was simple, almost innocuous, but it carried the weight of subtle understanding. I smiled, letting my hand linger over the cup, feeling the warmth seep into my fingers. It's a reminder that the world doesn't stop. Life continues, even after decisions that feel catastrophic. "I slept poorly," I said lightly, masking the tumultuous mix of pride and anxiety that churned inside me. "But the sun is still rising. We keep moving forward, Clara. That's all we can do." She nodded, yet her eyes betrayed her skepticism. She's questioning the fallout, I realized. And perhaps she was right. My choice had consequences, tangible and unavoidable. Within hours, The first whispers reached me, calls from board members, veiled in polite concern but heavy with expectation. They wondered aloud about the wisdom of refusing a billion-dollar deal. Each ring of the phone, each ping of an email, felt like a physical vibration against my ribs, a reminder that the world outside my office walls still judged me. I resisted the instinct to respond immediately. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, letting the leather contour around my body, feeling the subtle tension in my spine ease as I allowed myself a moment of reflection. This is not fear. This is anticipation. Fear would make me bow. Anticipation fuels action. I let my eyes wander to the skyline outside, noting the sharp lines of steel and glass, the bustling energy below. It was a city alive with ambition, greed, and opportunity, all of which could be harnessed without compromising who I was. The first real test came in the form of an unexpected visitor. Marcus Delgado, an investor who had long supported my company from the shadows, appeared in the doorway, his presence commanding yet familiar. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead and eyes that burned with a quiet intelligence. His tailored navy suit complemented the deep mahogany of the office, and the faint scent of cedarwood and citrus trailed behind him, warm and invigorating. "I heard about last night," he said, voice low, measured, carrying both concern and a hint of admiration. He studied me for a moment, hands clasped behind his back, before stepping further into the room. Bold move, refusing Carrington's deal. I met his gaze, feeling the steady warmth of his presence, a contrast to the cold steel of the previous evening's confrontation. "Bold or foolish?" I murmured, allowing the words to hang between us, a challenge and a confession. My fingers brushed the edge of the desk again, tracing the grain as if drawing strength from the physical reality beneath me. Marcus's eyes softened, though his posture remained impeccable. "Foolish, maybe," he said, a hint of a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, "but principled. That counts for more than most people realize." His words were simple, yet each syllable resonated against my skin like a vibration, affirming the truth I had felt all along. I let out a long breath, the tension in my shoulders loosening slightly. The physical sensation of relief, subtle, almost imperceptible, crept through me, spreading warmth from my chest down to my fingertips. It was the sensation of standing tall, of muscles once coiled tight with anxiety finally relaxing, of the mind and body aligning in quiet defiance. "I need to be careful," I admitted, voice low, almost a whisper. "The Carringtons, they won't let this go quietly. Their influence is far-reaching." Marcus nodded. He walked closer, placing a hand briefly on my shoulder, the warmth of his palm grounding me in the tactile reality of trust. "This is what leadership feels like," I realized, the ability to make a stand, to face a storm, and yet find grounding in those who believe in you. "Then we prepare," he said simply. "We find new opportunities. We rebuild. You're not alone in this." The rest of the day unfolded with a strange duality. The office buzzed with the normal rhythm of business, yet every interaction carried an undercurrent of uncertainty. Emails needed responses, contracts had to be reviewed, employees sought guidance in subtle ways. My body moved through each task with a heightened awareness, the texture of paper beneath my fingertips, the slight chill of the keyboard under my palms, the faint pulse of blood in my temples each time a challenge arose. Physical sensations became markers of emotional stakes, tactile cues in a landscape of anxiety and determination. By evening, the first public reaction began to trickle in. Industry analysts speculated on my decision, some praising integrity, others questioning judgment. I felt a flutter of apprehension, a physical tightening in my stomach, a reminder that courage is often accompanied by discomfort. And yet, beneath it all, a seed of exhilaration grew, subtle but insistent. I have chosen my path. Every ripple, every consequence, is proof that I am alive unbowed. That night, alone in the office, I let myself collapse into the chair, the leather embracing me like a long-lost friend. I closed my eyes, feeling the tactile warmth of the desk against my fingertips, the soft hum of the city outside, the faint vibrations of distant traffic under the floor. Each sensation grounded me, tied me to the reality I had chosen, and in that grounding, I found clarity. "This is the beginning," I thought, letting the words echo through my chest. Not the end of a career, but the birth of a new one that I will shape on my own terms. The decision was mine, and with it came the exhilarating, terrifying freedom of self-determination. In that quiet, I realized that every physical sensation, the warmth of a hand, the texture of a chair, the pulse in my veins, was a reminder that I was alive, fully, unflinchingly, and that my power lay not in wealth but in choice. The days that followed were a crucible, testing the resilience I had only begun to discover in the aftermath of the Carrington confrontation. The first shockwave came quietly, almost insidiously, a series of hesitant calls from potential partners, their voices polite, measured, yet loaded with doubt. Some hinted at fear of retaliation from the Carringtons, others masked judgment in the guise of professional advice. Every ring of the phone, every notification pinged like a subtle pulse against my skin, an almost tangible vibration reminding me of the fragile scaffolding of my professional network. I welcomed the challenge, embracing it as both a physical and mental trial. I moved through my office with deliberate awareness, my fingers grazing the smooth surface of the desk, the cool glass of the window, the soft fabric of my chair. Every tactile sensation anchored me, grounding me in the reality I had chosen to fight for. This was no longer just business. It was survival, integrity, and the assertion of self, all intertwined in the delicate choreography of each day. It was during one particularly long afternoon of meetings that I first noticed the subtle shift among my employees. My executive team, initially shocked and hesitant, began to mirror my resolve. Jenna, the CFO, a woman whose steely gaze and meticulous calculations had always intimidated me, approached my desk with a stack of revised projections. Her long fingers brushed the edges of the papers with a precision that mirrored her mind. "If we move quickly, we can reallocate resources to potential partners not influenced by the Carringtons," she said, voice tight but determined. The firmness in her tone, combined with the tactile certainty of her touch on the documents, conveyed unspoken loyalty, a shared determination that resonated physically in my chest. I studied her, noting the subtle rise and fall of her shoulders, the way her gaze held mine without faltering. She believes in this path as much as I do, I realized, a warmth spreading through my core, grounding me. I let my hand rest atop hers briefly, a physical affirmation of connection, of shared purpose, before turning to the new strategy. "Good. Let's move forward, faster than we've ever moved before," I said, letting the confidence of my voice mask the tremor of excitement that vibrated through my fingertips. The first real breakthrough came unexpectedly. A small but innovative tech firm, one that had been overshadowed by larger players, expressed interest in collaboration. Meeting them in their compact, minimalist office, I noted every detail, the subtle texture of the polished concrete floor under my heels, the warmth of sunlight spilling across the conference table, the faint scent of coffee and metal lingering in the air. Their CEO, a young man named Aaron, exuded quiet intensity. His eyes, dark and inquisitive, studied me with the curiosity of someone assessing a kindred spirit rather than just a business opportunity. "You refused $1 billion deal," he said bluntly, almost a challenge. "That takes guts or insanity." His voice carried weight, the vibration of each word resonating in the space between us. I felt it in my chest, in the subtle tightening of my stomach. I let my fingers trace the edge of the table before responding, letting the tactile sensation center me. "It's not about guts or insanity," I said carefully. "It's about integrity. I refuse to compromise on what defines us at the core of our company. If the choice is between wealth and dignity, we choose dignity every time." My voice echoed slightly in the high-ceilinged room, and I felt the physical presence of conviction in the steady alignment of my posture, the deliberate placement of my hands on the table. Aaron leaned back, letting the words settle. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face, subtle but genuine. "I like that. We can build something meaningful together, then." His fingers brushed lightly against the documents he pushed forward, a tactile signal of trust and willingness to collaborate. That small touch carried more weight than any verbal contract could. It was the unspoken acknowledgement of shared values. The momentum continued. Each new partnership, each strategic move, reinforced not just the viability of my company, but the physical and emotional reality of standing firm in my principles. I noticed a subtle, almost addictive sensation. The warmth that spread through my chest when making choices aligned with my core values, the tingling along my spine when employees mirrored my conviction, the quiet hum of satisfaction vibrating through my hands and arms as plans took shape. Each decision was not just mental, it was tactile, embodied, and profoundly satisfying. Yet, challenges remained. Not everyone within my company embraced this path easily. Some feared the potential backlash, the loss of prestige, the hypothetical ruination that might come from standing against a family like the Carringtons. Their hesitations manifested subtly, a delayed handshake, fingers brushing mine too briefly, eyes avoiding mine for just a fraction too long. I felt each one acutely, as if my body were a sensitive instrument picking up the tremors of doubt and fear. During one particularly tense meeting with senior staff, I noticed how the room seemed to contract around our collective anxiety. The texture of the conference table felt unnervingly rough beneath my palms, the leather of my chair sharp against my thighs. I let my fingers tap lightly, a small rhythm to calm the nerves thrumming through my body. I understand your concerns, I began, letting each word resonate in the space between us. But our integrity, our principles, those are non-negotiable. If we compromise now, we compromise everything we've built together. And I will not allow that. Silence followed, heavy and palpable, until Jenna exhaled and placed her hand over mine on the table, a tactile affirmation of solidarity. Others slowly followed, touching the documents, their pens, or the edges of the table in subtle, grounding gestures. The room shifted imperceptibly, the physical interactions reinforcing a collective commitment. I could feel the weight of their trust pressing warmly against my skin, a visceral reminder that leadership was as much about touch, presence, and embodiment as strategy or words. By the end of the week, the Carringtons' absence was a strange kind of liberation. The deals we forged were smaller, less glamorous, but imbued with authenticity, each handshake and document infused with a tangible sense of mutual respect. Every partnership, every collaboration, carried physical and emotional resonance, the handshake that lingered just long enough, the careful tracing of signatures on contracts, the subtle vibrations of a voice when agreement was reached. I realized that these sensations, often overlooked, were the real currency of my world now: trust, respect, and alignment of values. Late one evening, as I walked through the empty office, the carpet soft beneath my shoes, the cool air brushing against my skin from the ventilation system, I allowed myself a rare moment of reflection. My fingers traced the edge of the conference table where meetings had been held, the polished wood smooth and grounding beneath my touch. I remember the Carrington confrontation, the icy power in Elisa's gaze, the predatory posture of Charles. And yet, here I was, alive, unbowed, building a network not of coercion or fear, but of integrity and human connection. I closed my eyes, letting the tactile memory of every touch, the warmth of allies' hands, the reassuring pressure of a desk beneath me, the soft caress of paper under my fingertips, anchor me in this new reality. This is leadership, I thought, letting the words resonate through every nerve. Not fear, not submission, but connection. Not power, but presence. The physicality of each interaction, the way trust could be felt as acutely as seen or heard, had become the rhythm of my days, the measure of my triumphs. And for the first time in years, I slept that night not in tension or anticipation, but in calm, the warmth of conviction carrying me into rest. The battle was not over, the challenge is far from finished, but I had discovered something far more enduring than wealth: the tactile, visceral power of integrity, and the extraordinary strength that comes from standing unyielding in one's values. The calm of our small victories was shattered as the Carringtons made their first move. I felt the change in the air long before the first email arrived, an almost imperceptible shift, like the tense electricity before a thunderstorm. The office hummed with activity, the faint vibration of phones and keyboards mingling with the subtle pulse of my anxiety. My fingers hovered over the desk, tracing its polished surface, a grounding ritual as I prepared for the inevitable storm. It began with whispers from the market, analysts questioning the stability of my company, rivals exploiting the perceived weakness, and subtle smear campaigns designed to undermine both confidence and morale. Each message, each conversation, carried a physical resonance, a tightening in my chest, a prickle along my spine, the sensation of cold sweat pooling at the small of my back. I breathed deeply, letting the sensations anchor me. I am here. I am steady. I will not bend. The first personal confrontation came unexpectedly. Elise Carrington herself walked into our office one gray, rainy morning, heels clicking a deliberate rhythm against the polished marble floor. Her cream trench coat brushed softly against the hallway walls, her hair glistening faintly in the muted sunlight. She moved like a predator cloaked in elegance, eyes scanning the office, landing on me with a precision that sent a subtle shiver through my spine. "I hoped you'd reconsider," she said, her voice a silk-lace knife. She leaned lightly against the edge of my conference table, the fabric of her sleeve, brushing my arm as I passed. The touch was brief but charged, a physical assertion of dominance meant to unsettle. "Do not flinch," I reminded myself, feeling the coolness of the marble beneath my shoes, the slight vibration of my pulse in response. "I did reconsider," I replied, keeping my tone calm, measured. "But my position has not changed. Integrity is not negotiable." My hands rested lightly on the edge of the table, fingertips tracing the grain in a silent rhythm, grounding me as much in the tactile reality as in my conviction. Elise's eyes flicked to my hands, noting the subtle tension in my fingers, the deliberate steadiness of my stance. She straightened, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing at her lips. "Bold," she said softly, "and expensive." Her gaze swept the office before settling back on me, piercing and unyielding. Then, with a soft click of her heels, she was gone, leaving only the echo of her presence and a chill that lingered on my skin. That day I convened my team. The room was thick with tension, the air carrying the faint metallic scent of rain from the open windows. Fingers drummed lightly on tables, pens clicked against paper, and subtle shifts in posture betrayed worry. I let my hands rest on the polished wood, feeling its smooth, grounding texture, and drew in a deep, steadying breath. "We expected this," I said, voice carrying across the room. "The Carringtons will test us. They will try to intimidate, to pressure, to manipulate. We must remain steadfast, not just for the company, but for ourselves. Every action, every decision must reflect the integrity that defines us." I could feel the warmth of conviction spreading through my chest, the subtle tingling along my arms as my team's eyes met mine, trust beginning to manifest physically in their posture, in their gestures, in the tactile energy of the room. Jenna, ever precise, leaned forward, fingers brushing the table as she outlined counter-strategies. "We reinforce our partnerships, diversify our investors, and ensure that every client sees the authenticity in our approach. Their power is vast, but it is also visible. People respond to transparency, not fear." Each word was punctuated by the gentle, reassuring taps of her fingers against the smooth surface, a tactile reinforcement of her commitment and strategy. Marcus Delgado, standing at my side, added his presence as a physical anchor. His hand brushed briefly against my shoulder in silent support, a warm, grounding connection. "We will face resistance," he said, voice low and measured. "But we will not break. Every move we make will be deliberate, calculated, and principled." The subtle pressure of his touch, the vibration of conviction in his tone, resonated in me, reinforcing my own certainty. The first direct attack came in the form of a financial maneuver, a sudden withdrawal of a promised investment from a secondary backer. The news hit like a physical blow, chest tightening, stomach churning, fingers aching from gripping the edge of my desk as I absorbed the implications. Yet, even in the visceral shock, I found clarity. We anticipated this. We adapt. We persevere. My hands moved across the documents, tracing lines, recalculating, adjusting. Each tactile interaction, pen against paper, fingertips across spreadsheets, was a reminder that action, not panic, govern outcomes. As the week progressed, the Carringtons' pressure intensified. Anonymous tips to the media questioned our credibility, whispered rumors aimed to undermine confidence among employees and clients. The tension became a physical entity in the office. The faint ache of anxiety in my shoulders, the subtle thrum of anticipation in my pulse, the quickened rhythm of breath during moments of confrontation. Each sensation demanded acknowledgement, requiring a conscious tethering to reason and purpose. One night, After a particularly grueling day of meetings and strategy sessions, I found myself alone in the office. My fingers traced the smooth surface of my desk, the tactile reality of polished wood grounding me against the storm of thoughts. I allowed the exhaustion to settle, feeling the ache in my limbs as a reminder of effort and endurance. I inhaled deeply, letting the physicality of breath carry me into clarity. This is leadership, not in moments of ease, but in the crucible of challenge. The following day, I implemented a series of bold moves, reinforcing partnerships with smaller firms, initiating transparent communications with clients, and publicly affirming the company's commitment to integrity. Each action carried not only strategic weight, but also a physical resonance. Handshakes that lingered just long enough to convey trust, the firm placement of my palm on a partner's back as a sign of solidarity, the deliberate tracing of signatures on contracts with awareness of the tactile confirmation of commitment. By the end of the week, the first cracks appeared in the Carringtons' facade. Whispers of admiration and curiosity began to emerge among other industry leaders, drawn to the audacity and integrity of our stance. The tactile reality of trust, the handshake, the shared space of offices and conference rooms, the tangible alignment of purpose became our greatest weapon. Each contact, each gesture, reinforced a narrative more powerful than wealth or intimidation, the physical and moral truth of standing unyielding. I closed the office late that evening, walking slowly along the carpeted floors, hands brushing against the smooth wood of the desk, the cool metal of the doorknob, the textured fabric of a chair as I rested briefly. Each sensation was a testament to endurance, a grounding reminder that our values were not abstract concepts but lived experiences, felt in muscle, skin, and heartbeat. As I gazed at the city's skyline through the glass walls, rain streaking the panes, I felt a deep, almost visceral sense of clarity. The storm was here, the pressure immense, but each tactile and emotional interaction had forged resilience, trust, and conviction stronger than any threat. We will endure, we will thrive, and we will do so with dignity intact. Weeks passed, and the pressure from the Carringtons persisted, but a subtle shift began to manifest, a quiet acknowledgement from unexpected quarters that our stance was not only courageous but revolutionary. Each day, I moved through the office acutely aware of the tactile world around me, the soft carpet under my heels, the polished wood of my desk, the slight give of leather beneath my weight. These sensations became markers of time, grounding me through long hours and tense conversations, reminding me that despite the turmoil, the world continued to exist in tangible, palpable textures I could control. The first signal of change came from our employees. I noticed the subtle difference in the way they carried themselves, an increased steadiness in posture, confidence in gestures, and a warmth in handshakes that seemed to extend beyond obligation. I watched Jenna interact with the operations team, her precise fingers lightly touching the edges of documents as she communicated instructions, each motion conveying calm authority and reliability. Marcus Delgado, ever present, moved among the team, placing hands briefly on shoulders, offering grounding touches that silently reinforced commitment. The tactile resonance of trust became a living, breathing thing in the office, an unspoken network of confidence that intertwined with strategy. Clients began to respond as well. During a negotiation with a mid-sized manufacturing firm, I felt the subtle tension of the meeting settle like a live wire beneath my skin. The CEO, a middle-aged man with graying hair and sharp eyes, leaned forward across the conference table, fingertips drumming lightly against the polished oak. His gaze held mine, searching, measuring, testing the boundaries of resolve. Integrity is the currency now, I reminded myself. I allowed my own fingertips to trace the edge of the table, feeling the solid, unyielding texture as a physical affirmation of my stance. "I've watched how you've handled yourself," he said finally, voice steady, eyes unwavering. "Most would have caved under pressure. You've demonstrated something rare, true leadership. I want to work with a company like yours." His words carried weight, but it was the subtle, almost imperceptible physical connection, the way his hand rested momentarily on the table near mine, that sealed the trust in a tangible, real-world sense. I exhaled slowly, feeling a warmth spread through my chest, a grounding affirmation that courage was both noticed and rewarded. This newfound momentum was mirrored internally as well. I began introducing programs focused on the physical and emotional well-being of employees, mindfulness sessions, tactile engagement exercises, and spaces designed for comfort and productivity. Each element, from the softness of chairs to the warmth of natural light on skin, was deliberate, designed to reinforce the sense of security and shared purpose. I noticed subtle shifts in energy, a relaxed shoulder here, a calm breath there, the rhythm of synchronized movement in team collaborations. The tactile and emotional feedback loop became a powerful force, tangible proof that integrity nurtures loyalty and cohesion. Amid these positive developments, however, the Carringtons had not entirely retreated. Elise made another appearance, this time at a public industry event. I felt the weight of her gaze across the crowded room, a subtle, almost physical pressure that prickled along my spine. Her elegance remained undiminished, heels tapping a deliberate rhythm against the marble floor, the faint rustle of her cream ensemble carrying through the space like a whisper of control. But this time I was prepared. I felt my own presence solidify in response. Feet planted firmly, shoulders aligned, fingertips brushing the smooth leather of my clutch as I walked with deliberate grace toward the podium. During the event, I spoke openly about leadership and integrity, articulating not just ideas but the lived, tactile reality of our principles. My hands moved deliberately, tracing the microphone stand, touching the edges of notes, gestures punctuating the rhythm of my words. Each movement, each sensation, carried meaning. The audience responded not just to language but to the embodied confidence, the palpable conviction in every gesture. I could feel the resonance in the room, the subtle vibration of attentive bodies, the warmth of proximity, the unspoken acknowledgement of shared values. By the end of the event, whispers of admiration and curiosity spread like a tangible current. Analysts, previously skeptical, now commented on our principled resilience. Other CEOs approached, tentative handshakes transforming into firm, deliberate grips, physical affirmations of respect. Even within the Carrington sphere, murmurs of acknowledgement began to filter back, a grudging recognition that someone had dared to resist, to maintain dignity in the face of immense pressure. Returning to the office later that evening, the tactile sensations of space once again grounded me. My fingers brushed the smooth surfaces of the desk, the subtle vibrations of a city beneath the floor seemed almost celebratory, and the softness of the carpet under my heels reinforced the rhythm of accomplishment. Marcus Delgado approached, his presence a stabilizing warmth, and placed a hand lightly on my shoulder, an unspoken congratulations transmitted through touch. The next challenge arrived not from rivals, but from within, a subtle fracture among the senior team. Fear and doubt had crept into one executive's mind, a hesitation that threatened to ripple into others. I noticed it immediately, the slight tremor in the fingers, the avoidance of eye contact, the tapping of a pen in nervous rhythm. The physical cues were unmistakable. I called a private meeting, allowing the executive to feel the space, the presence of authority that was firm yet empathetic. My own hands rested lightly on the polished wood of the table, a grounding anchor, and I encouraged honesty, letting every tactile gesture communicate calm and respect. "You're feeling the pressure," I said softly, letting my voice vibrate in the space between us. "And that's understandable. But remember, strength is not the absence of fear. It's the choice to act despite it. Integrity isn't just a word, it's something we feel, physically, emotionally, and morally. It's the spine in your body, the pulse in your veins, the resonance of trust between us. Stand in that." The executive's eyes softened, tension visibly releasing from shoulders and hands. A subtle smile emerged, and as they extended a hand, the tactile confirmation of connection, firm, warm, deliberate, sealed renewed commitment. I felt a warmth radiate through my own chest, a quiet but profound affirmation that our principles were not just abstract ideals, but embodied truths, tangible in touch and presence. By the end of this period, our company had begun to thrive in ways unimagined before the confrontation. Smaller partnerships, grounded in trust and shared vision, blossomed into lasting collaborations. Employees moved with newfound confidence, each step, touch, and gesture reinforcing cohesion. The tactile world, the feel of a firm handshake, the warmth of supportive contact, the weight of presence in shared space, became a language of its own, as powerful as any contract or negotiation. Late one night, I lingered in the office, letting my fingertips trace the polished edges of the desk, the cool glass of the windows, the textured leather of a chair. The city below hummed with life, each vibration through the building a subtle reminder of the choices made, the resistance endured, and the victories quietly won. I allowed myself a rare moment of reflection, feeling the rhythm of breath and heartbeat as tactile proof of resilience, of leadership grounded in integrity, of a future built on unyielding principles. We have endured, I thought, feeling the pulse through my veins. We have risen, and the strength we've built is not borrowed, not bought. It is lived, felt, and shared. The realization resonated in every fiber of my being, a tactile and emotional affirmation of the journey, of the courage, and of the indomitable human spirit. The morning was crisp, the air carrying the subtle scent of early autumn and the faint tang of the city awakening beneath the glass and steel towers. I could feel the weight of anticipation in every fiber of my body, the press of my heels against the polished marble floor, the tautness of my spine, the subtle pulse in my fingertips as I arranged documents on my desk. Today was not just another day. It was the culmination of every decision, every act of courage, every tactile confirmation of trust and resolve. The Carringtons had signaled their intent for one final confrontation. Their message had arrived discreetly, elegant in presentation, yet carrying the unmistakable undertone of authority and expectation. Elise had requested a private meeting, ostensibly to discuss a potential reconciliation of business interests. The subtle physical pressure of her implied power reverberated in my chest, a shiver tracing my spine. I have anticipated this, I reminded myself, letting the firmness of the office floor beneath my feet anchor me. I will not waver. When they arrived, the room seemed charged with the weight of history and power. Charles Carrington's presence filled the space like a physical force, his height and tailored suit imposing, his eyes assessing and cold. Elise followed, moving with a deliberate elegance, her cream ensemble brushing softly against the polished wood of the conference table, her every movement a silent assertion of dominance. The subtle rustle of her coat and the warmth radiating from her presence were tactile reminders of the battle we had waged. I rose as they entered, feeling the texture of my own tailored suit against my skin, the slight tension in my shoulders as I planted my feet firmly. Marcus Delgado stood nearby, his presence a stabilizing anchor, his hand brushing briefly against my lower back, a subtle, grounding touch. Jenna and other key executives flanked me, their fingers tracing the edges of documents, their hands resting lightly on the table, signaling readiness and solidarity. Charles began, his voice smooth but edged with calculation. You've weathered our attempts. I admit, your resolve is impressive. He allowed the words to linger, each syllable pressing against the air like a weight. I could feel the tension coiling along my spine, my fingers tracing the polished surface of the desk to remain grounded. Elise leaned forward, eyes glinting. Most would have crumbled under pressure. But you've persisted. Tell me why. Her gaze was sharp, probing, yet there was a subtle shift, a flicker of recognition. She moved slightly, the warmth of her presence brushing the space near me, a test of composure. I allowed myself to note it without flinching. I value integrity, I replied, voice steady, each word measured. I believe that respect, both for myself and my team, is worth more than any sum of money. Compliance under coercion is not strength. True leadership is measured by adherence to principles, not capitulation to power. I let my fingertips brush the smooth edges of the table, the tactile sensation grounding me, the warmth radiating through my palms reinforcing my resolve. A moment of silence stretched, charged with unspoken understanding. Charles studied me, his icy gaze softening fractionally. You've proven something rare, he said finally. Resilience and conviction. Elise nodded subtly, her smile no longer a blade, but a recognition of shared understanding, though still layered with the elegance and precision that defined her. We discussed terms, but the conversation shifted subtly from intimidation to negotiation, a transformation that was almost tangible in the room. The tension, once oppressing, heavy weight, became a nuanced dance of mutual recognition. Handshakes were deliberate and firm, the tactile language of respect replacing the previous implicit coercion. The physical presence of each party, The warmth of hands, the steady alignment of posture, the tactile confirmation of gestures, spoke volumes beyond words. After they left, I allowed myself a long moment at the window. The city below hummed with life, its vibrations echoing faintly through the floor, a subtle affirmation of movement and progress. My hands rested lightly on the glass, feeling its cool texture, grounding me in the victory that was as physical as it was moral. Marcus approached silently, placing a warm, deliberate hand on my shoulder, a shared acknowledgement of the triumph we had built together. In the following weeks, the ripple effects were unmistakable. Industry leaders took notice, partnerships flourished, and our company's reputation as a principled, resilient organization became an asset more valuable than any financial deal. Employees thrived, their confidence bolstered by the tangible demonstration of leadership rooted in integrity. Each handshake, each shared workspace, each moment of collaboration carried the weight of lived values, creating an atmosphere where trust and respect were physically and emotionally palpable. The tactile and sensory experience of leadership had become central to our identity. I noticed how employees interacted, fingers lightly resting on shared documents, subtle touches on shoulders signaling solidarity, deliberate alignment of posture in team discussions, small gestures that carried profound meaning. The resonance of these actions reinforced the company's culture, creating a palpable, almost visceral sense of unity and purpose. One evening, I walked alone through the office, letting my hands glide across the smooth surfaces of desks, the textured fabric of chairs, the cool metal of door handles. Each sensation was a reminder of the journey, the confrontations, the resilience, the victories won without compromise. I paused by the large conference table, letting my fingers trace the polished wood, recalling the first day I had refused the Carringtons' terms. The tactile memory resonated through me, a confirmation of growth and endurance. Jenna appeared quietly, placing a hand briefly on the table near mine, a gesture of shared acknowledgement. "We've built something extraordinary," she said softly. The warmth in her touch, the subtle vibration of her presence, reinforced the truth of her words. Marcus joined us, and we stood together, hands brushing briefly, the physicality of our presence a silent affirmation of the team we had become. The company had transformed, not because of money, coercion, or fear, but because of values made tangible through action, touch, and presence. Integrity, respect, and dignity had become embodied, resonating in every handshake, every gesture, every tactile affirmation of trust. And in that embodiment, I found the truest form of power, not wealth, not influence, but the ability to lead with presence, to move through the world grounded in principles, felt as vividly as the texture of a polished desk or the warmth of a supportive hand. As night fell, I stood once more at the window, gazing at the skyline. The city shimmered with lights, alive and indifferent, yet resonant with the energy we had cultivated. I felt the pulse of victory, the warmth of integrity, the subtle thrill of resilience coursing through me. Every tactile sensation, the firmness of my stance, the smooth glass beneath my palms, the warmth of the office space, affirmed that the journey had been real, that the triumph was earned, and that the path ahead, though uncertain, was ours to shape with courage and dignity. "This is leadership," I thought, letting the words echo through my body, through every nerve and muscle. Not just in action, but in touch, presence, and unwavering adherence to values. I smiled softly, fingers lingering on the glass, feeling the cool texture anchor me in a truth more enduring than wealth, that strength, integrity, and resilience are always felt, lived, and shared. And in that moment, I understood fully the storm had passed, but its lessons remained, etched not just in memory, but in the physical and emotional fabric of everything I had built.